Good afternoon to our panelists and attendees. First, I want to just thank the organizers of NBPLA for first just creating the organization, the opportunity to come together and dialogue and talk about these important topics, but also for figuring out a way during COVID-19 to put on this event. The information we've heard over the last day and a half is critical and valuable. So I just would applaud the organizers of the event. Thank you for doing this. At Alabama Power, we appreciate the mission of the NBPLA. We think having a diverse group of voices in all of our state capitals and in the federal government is important. And as you heard from panelists yesterday, the role that lobbyists play in developing policy as a resource to policymakers is critical. Every panel has been strong, and I really am excited to just introduce the lead of this next panel, and I'll let him introduce this fine panel of experts. I would be remiss if I didn't mention my colleague from Southern Company Gas, Mr. Leroy Nix. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to former Congressman, Mr. Kendrick Meek.
Well, thank you so very much. I just want to say that it's a great honor to be a part of this panel discussion, because we have the last discussion of this particular summit, and we have so many good people that have participated over the last 2 to 3 days, and I want to thank those that took a lot of time to plan this opportunity for all of us, and I would include the panel in that. The NBPLA cocktail time, which is in the middle of the day, but it is Saturday. So I was just sharing in the pre-chat with the panelists that we're going to have a good time, and our goal is to hopefully answer questions or concerns that one may have based on state, federal, local, what have you. We have great panelists that will be able to respond to those questions. So our goal is to ask each panelist to take anywhere from 4 to 5 minutes, which will include a self-introduction. And then we're going to open the chat up. So when you think about it, and when you think about things that you want to ask a particular panelist or an issue that you would like to raise, we look forward to leaving a lot of time for that to happen. I'm here in Washington, D.C. today. I wish I was in Miami, where I actually live, but my wife and I commute back and forth. We're expecting snow here, but there's a lot going on in not only at 1600 Pennsylvania, but also in the United States Capitol. And there's a lot of transition that's taking place that will have a direct effect on state capitals and even local county commissions and city commissions. And so it'll be almost a devolution of responsibility that will be given to those government entities, and also in the area of education also. So, but I would like to kick off our panel by asking Michael Hopkins to not only self-introduce himself, but also talk about some of the things that he's working on and some of the issues that he sees, he envisions that will take place in the coming weeks. Michael.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And let me say, this is amazing how full circle things have come. I actually door knocked for your congressional campaigns in Florida in college. So thank you so much for your leadership and for being a public servant. My name is Michael Starr Hopkins. I'm the founder of Northern Star Strategies. We're a communications and public affairs company in Washington, D.C., but we do work all over the country. One of the things that we're working on right now is a project with the John Lewis Bridge Project, which is a project that aims to empower Selmians and also change the name of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And so throughout this project, what I've learned is the importance of being able to directly interact with local municipalities and the importance of state lobbyists, because at the end of the day, while everything is national, it's that information on the ground and those relationships that we really need and covet. And so as we move forward, I'm excited to talk about the comparisons between national lobbying and state lobbying and how they cross over and how we can better position those relationships to improve things like education, improve things like access to better healthcare, and improving the lot of every American. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you. And I look forward to this conversation.
Wow, you get an A+, outside of calling me old. That's all good. No, but it's great. And you're 110% right. Like I said, there'll be a lot of action and in many states and many of our colleagues in this great organization of ours are going to be faced with having a great understanding of what's going on in Washington, what's going on in the state capitol. Many governors need to be, especially on the GOP side, as we look at the healthcare changes that will be taking place. And the president just signed an executive order reopening that will reopen, quote unquote, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And some state governors decided not to take the incentives that were there in the Medicaid space and some other areas. So it's going to be a lot of exchange, and it's going to be a very fruitful discussion, and it will create a lot of opportunity for the membership. Next, I would like to bring on Leroy Nix, who in his own right, and has a very nice background there to share some of his thoughts and what he sees as the future as it relates to the interaction of representation. Leroy?
First of all, thank you, Mr. Mate. I didn't do any door knocking for you, but I feel like I've been working with and for you for a long time, and I've always enjoyed the friendship and the partnership and appreciate everything that you have done and continue to do. So always good to see you. First of all, I want to congratulate and commend the NBPLA for convening this group. I think to the extent that we can come together like this and talk about the important pressing issues of the day with a group of people that frankly do influence and move the needle in so many ways across this country. I think that is very productive. I think that is helpful, and I'm glad to be a part of it. I work for Southern Company Gas, and I've been with Southern Company going on 12 years now, and I started my career off at Alabama Power. So I've known Houston Smith and that crew for a long time, and all of those people are fantastic friends. To that end, I think, I was spending some time thinking about this conversation, and, we talk about the synergies between state lobbyists and federal lobbyists and what that looks like. And I think to the extent that we view those activities as separate functions, we do a disservice to the process. And frankly, from a coordination standpoint, I think we miss out on some opportunity to kind of leverage strengths across the board. So, when I think about this conversation, one of the things that I hope we do is figure out ways to improve those lines of communications between the state folks and the federal folks, because I think when you do it that way, you see a much clearer picture. And as far as I'm concerned, when you think about state lobbying, somewhat, that really drives in a lot of cases what happens at the federal level. You think about how state legislatures work, things happen in certainly more real-time fashion than they do at the federal level. So clearly things are happening more quickly there, and it's just a lot more activity. And so, when we think about that, focusing on that state level activity, I think, it can really set the tone for what your actions on the federal level look like, and frankly, vice versa. So I won't take up too much more time, but happy to be a part of this conversation. Looking forward to the dialogue and exchange. And I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Meek.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. And wow, y'all are doing great. Usually, we set these ground rules and people, it's kind of like we're trying to call you and text you, and I'm doing this over the screen saying, okay, almost like a Baptist preacher, can he close? But thank you so very much. Our next speaker and our next panelist who's going to share not only opening comments, but some wisdom is Dr. Glover. And Dr. Glover, as we all know, Madam President, in many ways, we appreciate you as an educator on this panel because, those of us that are in the representation world we represent, public and private companies, and you represent the future. You represent the right now in the education field. And Tennessee State is a great institution. I used to have other words for Tennessee State when I was an outside linebacker for the FAMU Rattlers, but I appreciate the work and the historical presence that the institution has. So I guess I would just pose a question for you, since you're a unicorn on this panel. And I want to thank you for your while I'm saying being short, but I work with Amira Salam, or I work for her. And I know that we both interact with her on a daily basis. And when she worked as a CBC Institute fellow, when I was in Congress in our office, and we hired her as counsel, she used to wear this pink and green every day. And I'm an Omega, and it was a Delta in the office. Said one day she's going to run out of this pink and green. And guess what? Several years later, she's still wearing pink and green every day, as though she's still a neophyte. But I want to ask you, as it relates to Tennessee State University, if you could address it in your comments, in its status as a land grant, institution, what effects, as it relates to government, will it have at the state and federal level? Since there's so much that's going on, PPP, or how would you say the stimulus package that has helped in your institution, but also as it relates to this moment that we're in now, since we have a member of the historical Black college family, a part of this executive branch. Madam President.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate this honor of participating in this dialogue. I am Glenda Glover. I serve as president of Tennessee State University. I also serve as international president and CEO of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So this dialogue is very special to me because I'm often asked the question about between the federal and the state assistance, the lobbying that we need. And they ask me, what is the most important issue facing Black colleges today? And normally I would say funding, but it's actually bigger than that. The biggest problem we have is the lack of a coordinated lobbying base. We don't have advocates for HBCUs in the HBCU community at the state level, at the federal level. Majority institutions, have people walking those floors, knocking on doors, talking to people, making the phone calls. We don't have that in largely in African-American community for Black colleges, for HBCUs. And so that's our number one problem. Now, getting back, here's how that hurts. Because as president, I see firsthand how we have to maximize, how we have to align these goals in order that we can ensure that funding is maximized. And in this climate, we have to have both state and federal advocacy. Because I'll give you one example, and that's the land grant. Tennessee State is an 1890 land grant institution. There are 19 HBCUs that are land grant institutions. And most HBCUs never get their full match. You get $1 for dollar match is required by Department of Agriculture. They give you, I just say, $1 million. The state has to match with $1 million, but the state just doesn't do it. They get something, a partial match, but not the full match. And many times the majority institution receive 4, 5, or 6 times their match. And so we need the coordinated efforts between the state and the federal lobbyists and those who have access and can access us to those policies, so we can help them pass those policies at the federal level, because they don't work unless the state funds come in there also. So there's definitely a need for how universities, can meet their goals through a coordinated and unified effort, such as what we present today.
Well, it's definitely something that we're going to learn more about in real time. The country is in an interesting posture right now, not only talking about January 6th, but the president moved to look at hopefully changing the federal government being a drum major, along with the civil rights community, education community, healthcare community, and in tackling disparities. And so with you being one of our leaders in the HBCU, leadership family, you're going to be a big part of the solution. So we look forward to that. Hopefully it'll stimulate some questions. Thank you, Doc. Our next panelist is going to be Roy Robinson, a well-tendered person within the field of representation. And I want to thank you for being a part of this panel. And sir, feel free to, since you're our last person to speak in opening comments, feel free to share with the good people in this cocktail reception that we're having right now, even though I'm drinking coffee, your feelings and what you think will be good for them to hear.
Thank you very much. My name is Roy Robinson. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. Have been lobbying now for about 25 years. Started my own firm in 2002, and we founded another firm in 2018. You know, NBCSL, that's how I became pretty involved with the other Black lobbyists, because to be quite honest with you, you don't see us much. I understood Dr. Glover's comments concerning the lack of the continuous lobbying efforts in the Black community. I too am a HBCU graduate, Southern University, big rivals of FAMU, but we all good. It's all good. But I've been doing this now for about 25 years, and you see a lot of things, but I'm very happy for this, the National Black Lobbyists Association. It is well needed, and I am glad that the Greg Joneses and the Yolanda Cash Jacksons got together and created this. Happy to be a part of it. Don't know what else you want me to say, but I will answer the questions as we go.
Okay, well, great. We're 2 minutes ahead of schedule, despite of my best efforts for talking in between the panelists. But we do have a question from Lorenzo, and I believe we'll direct the first answer, well, opportunity to answer. The entire panel can participate if it wishes to do so. He said, isn't there an organization that represents, his question, an organization that represents all Black HBCUs? I'm familiar with 2 of them, but Dr. Glover, since you are a part of, I'm assuming both of them, you please address that.
There's Thurgood Marshall College Fund, there's United Negro College Fund, there's NAPIO. The United Negro College Fund, as we know, represent private colleges. The larger, many folk in the community don't recognize that UNCF does not represent every university. Now, they do have some collaborative efforts where they invite state schools to participate, but UNCF represents private schools. The Thurgood Marshall College Fund represents the state assisted schools. You know, we never say state supported anymore because the state does not really support the schools like they used to. They assist, but most of the state schools, you know, struggle, just like the private schools do. And then the third one is NAPIO, the National Association for Equal Opportunity in Education. And they work hard. So those are 3 organizations, but we still need the coordinated efforts when funding comes up, like for example, the CARES Act last year. When the CARES funding, when Alma Adams and the others and Representative Clyburn and all the others led that effort to get the funding, the emergency funding, that was more than a notion, but it took the college presidents. I know I was up to 1 o'clock in the morning getting information back to Congresswoman Adams, because that's what we have to do to work together. So there are organizations that work, yes, but then individual presidents work together also. We have various councils and we call on our Congress people. You know, Congressman Meeks, we had to call on you many times to get things done, to go and talk to the people, go and talk to the right person and see you pull your coattail. You were always so accommodating. That's why I didn't mind sending you a check. You were running.
Well, thank you, Doc, and I appreciate it. I'm going to tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's important to understand the gravity of the situation. I speak with my good friend and sister in the fight, Yolanda Cash Jackson, often about some of the challenges that we have now, the level of not only the challenges, because, you know, it's easy to describe a problem, but it's hard to be about the solution. We have PhDs in that area of talking about what we need to do, but what we are doing. And I think this organization, especially, Mr. Hopkins and Mr. Nixon and Mr. Robinson and so many others that are a part of this world, especially on the private side, we could be a great help to people like Dr. Glover in her capacity as a university president. It's just quickly, I got a call from a friend of mine here in Washington that represented a company, and they had $1 million scholarship dollars, and they were trying to, it was the old saying, we're family, let's just talk here. It was the old saying, I won't name the institution, but I have some relationship with it. I've tried to call them, and we're trying to get this $1 million scholarship piece to them, and we can't get a call back. Able to not only connect him with that institution, but also connect him with a few other folks within our HBCU family. So we have to bone up. If you're a graduate of HBCU, good. If you're not, good. We have to help, these institutions as we move forth. And that's what we could do in the private side. I know Southern Company has been a part of that effort for many, many years. And I thank them for their role in helping us get kicked off here. Now, I know that we have a few other questions that are out there that I'm trying to fill those questions, because I still only have a few questions on my piece, but I do see a chat that's moving along, a very healthy chat that's moving along here. But does anyone else have any ideas on how we can help one another? Just put it this way, here's a question. How can we help one another as we look at this representation? Uh-oh, did I just cut myself off here? I'm sorry. How do we help one another as we look at the representation of opportunity? Because I know during this conference, many times those of us that represent entities, we are, how would I put it? And I think, Mr. Robinson, if I can, since you have more time than all of us on the representation side, many times lobbyists of color, we're not the first approached when it comes down to representing a private sector client. We're kind of like an add-on or a third cousin. And so what that means that how do we get our friends and family, and some of us are public, in-house government relations people. So how do we get to the level that we get the phone call, and how do you establish that relationship with a corporate entity so that you can take the lead in picking the team, which then empowers? I'm putting this question out there because I want to paint like a half a picture here with a broad brush. How does it, because if you get to pick the team for a particular issue, it empowers not only you as a point person, but it empowers the influence of that team. And in many cases, the majority and the minority as it relates to those that are elected, if you follow me. Go ahead, sir.
One of the things that you do is just like everything else, you show up.
Yes.
And you show up, and what you do is put yourself in a position where you may know information that others don't. And that's working your own network. There's no other way to say it. Once you do get to pick that team, you make sure that they're armed with everything. One of the things of how we can help each other is when we come together in a conference such as this, you talk about it. You talk about who you represent. You got to find somebody in that other state that may not be a part of that team, but you go and tell your counterparts in my state, for instance, that we got somebody in, say, Kentucky, say in Alabama, say in Florida. They can help you. And that's the way you have to start that off. But the first thing is just flat out showing up.
Mr. Hopkins.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. So much of kind of what, and let me say I'm not a lobbyist, but so much of what lobbying is relationship building. And I think we've got to not look at each other as competition. Congressman Meek, there are not very many of us in positions of power in Washington and across the country. And so there is often this idea that kind of we have to compete against each other, and the power that we've got to hold on to. And what I see in so many boardrooms and kind of white spaces, as I'll put it, is, a networking where if I need to, find a way to reach out to one company to help me with a project, the VP will pass along their name to someone else who also is white, and they're continuing to empower each other, and money is being moved along, kind of by racial lines. And what I have been really happy to see working with groups like, Greg Jones and Terry Reynolds is the notion that we can both empower each other and while also doing good work. And so I think that's really what we have to remember, that by doing good work, we're not just helping financially each other, but we're helping the community as a whole. And that kind of has been the lesson of 2020 for me, of how we can move this forward.
Okay. Madam President.
It goes deeper too. It has to be a philosophy. I grew up in a civil rights home. My dad was a civil rights leader in Memphis. And he had this philosophy that the two people in your circle, in your environment, your organization must be Black. One is the person who handles your money, and two, your lawyer or whoever represents you on any big stage. That was his philosophy to kind of pass down to his 5 girls. That's the philosophy. And so you have to make a concerted effort to look for an African American, and they're not hard to find. I grew up in the CPA world, and the biggest insult I always got is, "Oh, we can't find a Black CPA." So, okay, I tell you what I want you to do. We want to recess this meeting right now, but I'm going to help you find one. And when you come back to us, we'll have your list for us from which we can select. So we have to make an effort to to serve the African American communities, to select those to be around us, to help advise us and keep us going, keep us straight.
Okay, well, that's Leroy. I was going to ask another question, but it looked like you want to ask something. Say something.
I just wanted to add something to that point. I think everybody kind of hit on what I think is the most important thing, and that is we do have to talk to each other. There's enough out here for everybody. I will say that as a corporate guy, we've got work to do, and we haven't always gotten it right. And I think that, it's incumbent upon people like myself and others to not be afraid to help people that look like us, which is also an issue that exists. And for the life of me, I can't quite understand it, but I'm certainly going to try and do my part to change that, because I believe in helping people that are good at what they do and that can be helpful to what it is that I'm trying to get accomplished. And I know a lot of those folks look like me. So, but again, it all starts with us talking to each other, coordinating our efforts, and presenting a united front around these things. I mean, Kendra, you know as well as anybody, some of the biggest opportunities that that have come across your plate or been presented to you are things that you hadn't even thought about until you had a 5-minute conversation with somebody that knew a little piece of information that you didn't, which turns into something big, right? And so, I think about, we talk about HBCU and the importance and the focus on that.
Right.
Things can be done in that space as well. And this is not a plug for Southern Company, but it is a recognition of how when people are motivated and want to do big things can happen. So we just launched and announced a partnership with Apple and to support a mission called the Propel Center. So Apple contributed 25 million. Southern Company contributed 25 million, and those funds and this effort is going to be housed at the AUC, and it's going to support HBCUs, it's going to support Black entrepreneurs, it's going to support this ecosystem of, frankly, success that I think we all want to see in our communities, and I'm excited about it. But again, that's just one example of like some of the big things that can happen when we work together and when we try to get something done. So thank you.
Yeah. Leroy, if I can, and I want to, since you're in the 404, and Roy is there too. I just, I guess, I want to ask our participants that are in this cocktail reception to look up the bomb, and I will say the bomb that our general counsel at Coca-Cola laid on everyone this week. And his brother is Bradley Guyton. He's the general counsel. And basically the headline goes, Coca-Cola general counsel says diversity efforts ain't working, unveils new guidelines. And so what he's basically saying, especially to law firms that are out there, if you have a book of business with Coca-Cola, you're going to have hard parameters, and take a chance. It's in the daily report. I have it. Hopefully we can send it around to our membership. He's basically saying, if you're doing our legal work, 30% of that workforce has to be a part of that has to be 30% Black. Now, a lot of folks got upset about that. And that's been the chat for the last 3-4 days about how can they do this, that, and the other. That's a quota and this, that, and the other. But you can also make the argument, it's been a quota to keep Black associates and Black partners out of the revenue stream and doing work for a publicly traded company like Coca-Cola. And I think since the Business Roundtable, Business Roundtable here after George Floyd incident that took place, and we know that it takes place more times than we would like for it to have taken place. But this time, I mean, it came at a time that it was like a unicorn moment. We were all shut in. We were all paying attention to social media, and people had a chance to focus on it. And I won't say proud Black folk, I would say people of goodwill throughout the country came together and said enough is enough. And it came after several incidents that took place. So saying all of that, take a look at that article. Hopefully we can throw it around. I'm sorry I'm not in a capacity where I can share it with all of us so we can read it right now. But you can quick Google. He's laying the law down. He's created a discussion because folks are pushing back on it. But you know something? He's not a government entity. This is a private company. It's publicly traded, but they can do whatever they want to do with their dollar. And apparently the CEO of Coca-Cola is standing in with them because he would not have put such statement out if it wasn't cleared in the C-suite. So I want to throw that out there and what that means, because when we talk about opportunity, we have to talk about a forward lean. Jesse Jackson speaks of, we don't want, Reverend Jesse Jackson would always say, we don't want special treatment, we just like equal treatment. We have BLM saying that we want to matter. We're not saying that we want to be in control, not saying that we want to dictate our will on others, but we just want to matter, which is the lowest denominator, of even being a part of any discussion. I see someone has just put the article up, which is great. Take a look at that article, because I think in the different roles that we play, those of us that are on this call need to be non-lobbyists or lobbyists or Madam President, president of an institution in an international organization. This applies to all. We were in rooms with people who can make decisions. If you want to make the right decision, you may be in the elevator, Brother Robinson, you may be in the elevator with someone who's a decision maker and say, listen, you can double down on what you can maximize your plan that you've already put out there as it relates to fairness and equity. I just kind of throw that out there to the panel.
I love it.
You know, I am aware of that article, and what is interesting about it is now what we haven't talked about, but we probably will as we get through this, the lawyer lobbyist versus the non-lawyer lobbyist. In that instance, you got the general counsel of one of the world's most powerful companies saying, this has got to happen. This will happen if you're going to do business with me and Coca-Cola. That's what he said. If you're on the non-lawyer side, that's a different ball game, because now you don't necessarily have a person who throws down that gauntlet. He has people probably working up to him through the lobbyist area as a general counsel, but some folks have separated that out. Some companies have separated that out, and it's on the external side, and you never kind of get into that stream that we're talking about now. Yeah. So it is interesting. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Could the gentleman suspend for 1 second? And I just want to, I don't want to do the Maxine Waters. I'm reclaiming my time because I don't have to, because we're friends and family. To the point. Usually the GC is over the bank for external representation. He's usually over the bank. That usually falls under GC. In some instances, you're right. I mean, they kind of put it somewhere else, but it usually falls under the GC. And the reason why I mention it, some folks say, well, why are we having an economic conversation? Well, the economic conversation drives politics. I've been on both sides of it for the last, 20 plus years as a member and now on the representation side. And so what I do with my personal bank influence the politics of what I feel that's important. For instance, if there's a member of Congress that call and say, hey, I would like for you to support me, I have a problem if they were a part of the number that even after the invasion by terrorists on the Capitol, that they supported to throw out the vote of Ms. Johnson. It woke up early one Tuesday morning for representation and wanted to discount her vote in Georgia or any other state because they were riding on some political whim about holding up democracy. My bank, that person will not get a contribution. That's just where it is. So when it comes down to how do we position ourselves, because when you're at the top of a team that can choose a team, that means that your economic incentive for doing that, obviously, you're going to be at the top of the realm as the coordinator. And then you work the politics because you're able to contribute, to or build a team or have a fundraiser of folks that you help. And so that's what's happening right now. We have individuals, and I won't say that are, white against black or whatever the case may be, male against female, whatever the case may be. We have to get to the position to where that we're a part economically of the decision making, because you have folks check out. Let's say, for instance, on the side of our organized labor brothers and sisters, the Biden policies will benefit those individuals, but you have some bleeding there. You have some members of organized labor that doesn't agree, their membership doesn't agree with this present administration and feel that the election was stolen. So how do we get people of goodwill at the top of this realm? Because we don't want to return. Dr. Glover, I was in a discussion with one of, a PhD over in London this morning. We've been kind of going back and forth over a couple of days, graduate of, Yale and carrying on, and from Louisiana. And we served together on the CBCF board of directors, Congressional Black Caucus board of directors. And we were talking about, now we have the opportunity to talk about diversity and inclusion. Mm-hmm. Are we going to return the favor that white America has literally laid on our head? I mean, we get the opportunity to make decisions. Will we hire just all black folk? Will we not hire gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, transgender? Will we have, all women and no men, you know, that kind of thing. Will we practice what we have asked for and preached? And now we're at the moment because, and I'm closing now, I'm not going to act like a Baptist preacher from a small church in front of a big congregation. But are we going to squander this moment to show how we can do it? Because this is the great experiment. Barack Obama, President Obama was elected. Folks got real nervous. Like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen now? You know, and now, you know, we're into a second generation of Black representation and history-making representation at the vice president's level. How do we deal with that? And how do we include this? So I don't know, Brother Robson, I started off a question with you and I ended up being a panelist. Both of you can respond and appreciate it.
One thing is the GC's got to care. You're right about that bank, but the GC's got to care enough to make that statement. And let's hope as we go forward, we see more of that. But that GC's got to care enough. You're right. Everything goes up through them, but sometimes they don't care enough. Dr. Glover.
I think you're right. Somebody said earlier, I think it was you, Brother Mix, that said the president had to be involved in this because GC wouldn't go out on his own like that and just say it. But I think the 30%, I think that there was a little problem with them saying 30%. Well, not problem. They didn't expect it to be that high. I think that was it. He went all the way in on it. He just said all the new work. You know, we're not gonna upset the old work that you did. But all the new work that comes in, I'm making the point from here on in has to be with. It wasn't just Black folk. It had to be disability, LGBTQ. It had to be just. It wasn't. I'm saying it wasn't just women. What we always get those numbers confused. But it was African American people of color. So I applaud the brother. I applaud
him. Brother Hopkins.
I mean, I don't have to tell anyone on this call that people like Maynard Jackson gave the blueprint to all of us when it comes to things like this. You know, when the airport in Atlanta was being built, he said, you know, if you want to get a contract to build part of this airport, then you need to make sure that the people who are laying the concrete are Black and making sure that you're empowering Black people. And I think we've seen that continue in generations. But now we've gotten to this moment where corporations are really looking to support African-American interests. One, because it's financially beneficial. The public relations side of it is really important. And there is a need to show that they are inclusive and that they are, you know, trying to repair some of the ills historically. And so I think it's now upon us in the private sector and those of us who are working with governments to figure out what we want and how we can identify ways to help. And what I mean in that is, for example, you know, I'm working with the community in Selma. And so, yes, changing the name of the Edmund Pettus Bridge is an amazing thing to do. It'll make us all feel good. But at the end of the day, how are we going to affect those people on the ground in a way that repays the debts that their ancestors originally paid so that we could all be here? And so what I mean in that is finding out ways to have business incubators, finding out ways to be supportive of after-school programs. It's one thing I've learned is it is difficult when you're a smaller organization to identify the points of contacts for some of those bigger institutions that can be helpful and that can help with those resources. And so I think we've got to do a better job, one, figuring out what it is we want, but two, figuring it out who the people are that can be helpful. And I think on both sides, that's true. I think corporations have to be much more willing to look down the chain and see how to be helpful. But I think also on the private side, we've got to figure out how to better identify the people who can be helpful. And that's kind of where this comes into play.
And one more thing, and that is several of us have access, and I sit on 2 publicly traded company boards. We have access and we can make a difference right there. Many of you know who the clients are. You start where you are and make that difference. The new buzzword in this climate is racial equity. And that's what we're trying to do, make sure that racial equity seeps in. We say diversity and inclusion, and they put both of them because you can be diverse and still not be inclusive. And so we have to really push it. You know, when I sit in the boardroom, I listen to everything, I read every report, every page. to see where is it that African Americans can tip up, well, where can we tip that scale a little bit more? That's what we have to do when we get in these boardrooms and we're talking to the CEOs. And that's why I just applaud any company. And Southern company, Propel Center, we take our hat off to you because you and Apple, you are doing something huge. I talk to Kathleen Richardson almost every day about how this has happened. This is going to be so huge that you all didn't just talk to talk. You put that money on the table. And so we're all excited about that. We can't wait till I got the big picture of it in my office. We can barely wait for it to happen. I picked up my corner office right across from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So it's beautiful. So that, you all are doing it. And we look and see you have a direct commitment to diversity. I read your annual report and I read your prospectus. It's a direct commitment to diversity from the top down. So that's how we make these starts like that. And so this panel here, we have enough right here to go in and get at least business right now for the Black community, just by who we know and what we can say to them. So that's the start, because we don't have to keep outlining the problem. We know what the problem is. Now we can go in and solve it.
Good. Well, we want to have Leroy, you want to say something?
I was going to say, Dr. Glover, I'm glad you were able to find your office and have it picked out already. So that is good. But, I was also thinking, I think that the commitment that the GC made was fantastic. But I think if we are all honest with ourselves, we know that sometimes these decisions in terms of who we hire to do external engagements or whatever happen at a much lower level, right? And so to the extent that you don't have representation at those levels, then you can see the uphill battle that you're kind of engaged in. And so, and I know everybody on this call is focused on this type of thing, but to the extent that we can get more people that come from more diverse backgrounds in some of these offices, especially in DC. Kendra, as well as anybody, if you look across the landscape of corporate offices in DC, they are not reflective of the way that they make that, the communities from which they get their money. You know what I mean? It's just a thing, and everybody is aware of it. But we need to do something about that, right? Because again, these issues could be raised to, the C-suite level or whatever. But frankly, that shouldn't have to be the way that we go about being engaged from a commercial or business activity standpoint. I mean, we're capable. Nobody's asking for a handout. None of that stuff. We're asking for a fair shot. And if you don't have people in the room that appreciate the benefit of diversity, or don't know to appreciate the importance of diversity, then I can see where the mark can be missed. So yes, focusing on it at a high level, leadership starts at the top, right? But we also know that there's some things that you can do on the other end of that spectrum to change and bring some efficiency and frankly, some equity to the process.
And I agree, and I'm glad that we're not having the discussion as people of color and people of goodwill. I always say people of goodwill. Every civil rights or every fight that we fought in this country for just simple rights, just fair play, women right to vote, Black right to vote, civil rights were a group of people of goodwill. That made it happen, because we can't do it individually. I know that some of these discussions, and I was just looking at the chat room when you were talking there, this kind of boldness it should happen. Every conversation I'm in is about how can we maximize, and we got to look at the maximize. That should be almost like a watchword for 2021. We want to maximize this effort. We want to maximize goodwill. As Dr. Glover said, and she put emphasis on talking about what we need to do. We're beyond that now. We're well beyond that now. And there are people that are counting on us as we speak, in the moment, as we breathe in this COVID-19 atmosphere. The question on disparities, healthcare disparities, we've seen full circle on what effect of the lack of access to healthcare and attention to those members of our community, and all Americans that are frontline workers who can't call in, don't know what Zoom, they don't have a Zoom account. They have to punch in and punch out every day. They have to catch public transportation, and they're exposed. to this virus that we have now, that even after this virus, if I can, we're going to have more individuals with pre-existing conditions, because it's an open question on what effect, long-term effects it will have on the immune system. And then the discussion about who's going to take the vaccine and who's not. And I don't want to get into that because that's a whole nother, I can go into a whole nother, I'm trying to keep this to the book of Ephesians because there's only six chapters there. So, I don't want to get into Matthew and carrying on, but that's a discussion that we have to be thought leaders in that area. Leroy, we've known each other for some time, so I think it's important. And I know that all of us, and I would open this up because I was looking again at the chat room, all of us are at the table, Dr. Glover, of decision making. Mm-hmm. And, it takes a level of courage because you have to kind of set the stage and saying, listen, I'm not here to stay the rest of my life. And I've been asked to be on this board, this working group, because a lot of us have been called in, even at my firm, King and Spalding called in, what can we do better? Because, we had a listening session after Floyd. Remember that, yes. We had a listening session. A lot of us were a part of, listening to people and frustration and carrying on, how do we answer the question? When we answer the question about doing the right thing, so please don't hold it against me for sharing with you what you need to hear versus what you may be comfortable. It's an uncomfortable conversation. Mm-hmm. When you start talking about the bank, that's the bottom line. You start talking about, because there are pre-existing conditions, not conditions, but relationships that are there that people are counting on, and what they used to do in 1980 something, these people are still in part of the team. So how do we break that, and what can we use as an organization to promote that courage and backing and knowledge? How can this organization serve as a conduit to how would you say, a network to allow people like Michael that's working on Edmund Pettus Bridge name changing? How do we know how to work with him to get our clients or relationships to help fund that effort? Because that will be a monumental move to change it from a clear segregationist and a person that stood for segregation and racism to a man of peace and a figure that will possibly, and I'm telling you, I think big now, be on the mall, the Washington Mall, monument, named after someone like a John Lewis. I see the same thing with someone like a Nancy Pelosi, not because she was the first speaker, but the fact that she's beyond unicorn status right now, as becoming speaker twice and standing and pushing on Affordable Care Act and other things. Yeah. Throw that out there. Anyone?
Well, I'll just start. You ask how can this organization, or how can we as a community help people that are in these decision-making capacities and support their efforts? And I think the short answer is by doing just that, supporting them, right? Because, it's all fun and game when somebody else is taking I say taking the risk, but it shouldn't feel risky to do the right thing. When you think about the buying power that exists within the African-American community, I think it's $1.9 trillion. So there are commercial reasons and benefits for corporations, again, to do the right thing. But sometimes it just takes some nudging, right? Rome wasn't built overnight, but it shouldn't take forever for us to build a better community. And to that end, I think that people in these kind of decision-making power, positions and places of influences, I think sometimes those people also need support. So to the extent that groups like this can support those people out there that are making good, productive moves for people of goodwill, as you put it, Kendrick, and I like that. I like that phrase. Then we've got to support those folks because they come out the heat too sometimes. And I think we've got to protect our champions and each other.
So will it be helpful if members of this organization, when they see a good example like this Coca-Cola piece, share that with Ms. Robinson, the leadership, of this organization, to kind of put on a message board or what have you, because many times it's the how. You talk about something and then folks say, well, goodness, now we have to now build this yellow brick road. Well, someone has already built the road. We just need to use the footprint. And like the creators of Microsoft said, copy and expand from IBM. So I think there's a way that we can information share as folks put on their shero and hero hats to go do battle on behalf of fairness and opportunity. In the chat room, someone said, I just want a shot, at the work. Now we know when we get to work, we have to perform. Don't hang us out there. And making a decision, and you're not ready to be in good practice and have a forward lean, and we know we can't squander that opportunity. Will a message board be helpful to kind of share this information? Put that out to the panel.
Yeah, I think it certainly would be. And, one other thing I'd like to add is, some type of pipeline, some type of talent development and exposure pipeline to, college students, high school students, the younger people, to let them know that this profession exists. I don't know about anybody on this call, but frankly, I wasn't exposed to too many lobbyists when I grew up in rural Alabama, right? And so to the extent that we want people to continue to influence this process in ways that are beneficial to everybody, then we need to have people in the game, and we need to have a bench. And I think an organization like this would be the perfect vehicle to lead such an effort. And, I'm certainly willing to commit my time, attention, and resources to kind of being helpful to pushing that forward. So.
Okay. Roy, you wanted to add something to this as we we're going to probably close down in 5 minutes. So we'll go 5 minutes over, but go ahead.
I think you're right. I think the message board, especially for a piece like Coca-Cola, would be extremely helpful. But it's also helpful to, again, the other corporations of that magnitude that you're trying to, they need to see that also. As far as making that effort for the Edmund Pettus Bridge, that helps also. But it's got to be national organizations that take that lead and say, we need this to happen. The ones that do business in all over this country, especially in the Alabamas or in Edmund Pettus, the Coca-Colas, the Home Depots, those type of organizations, UPS, FedEx, they have to show that they are, again, I keep saying it, they have to show that they are ready to make that move. It is easy to talk about what the gentleman did from Coca-Cola with his CEO is monumental. I haven't seen that before.
Madam
that
President,
has to happen.
Yeah, Madam President, thank you, sir. Madam President, I want to, usually when I have a conversation with someone like yourself, who is in the game and actually, a part of the Super Bowl at the highest level of the Divine Nine, I wouldn't say you're lucky. I would say that you're chosen to be in the position of influence and power, and you've walked the walk of being a Black woman in America, being a leader of a higher education institution, being head of an international social action organization of Black women that in many instances, all the way from, belly to belly in the hull of a ship over here, has really held not only Black America together in a spiritual instant, because every church is the backbone of women that have been unappreciated, how would you say, unsung, but also been a part of the fiber of America. How can this group, how can we as NBPLA be of assistance, one thing that Leroy mentioned during his last statement was that when he was coming up, he wasn't introduced to this so-called representation, one called, lobbying community, and the opportunity that exists to be a part of government. Because when I talk with Yolanda Cash Jackson, I talk to her about, the 4 branches of government. Of course, you have executive, you have legislative, you have judicial, and then you have this lobbying community that's out there that has a great influence. And some of it is public and some of it is private, but they're a part of this government system. How can we play a role to be an asset for someone like yourself, to be able to make sure we open opportunities for those individuals that are in this chat, that's 24, that's interning, and that's trying to get a grip on life right now?
Well, I think the example has been set right now. Just seeing this group, this advocacy base that I see here, we don't have the advocacy base that we need. And we're to encourage more students to choose law and choose advocacy, choose lobbying as a profession, because you can always tweak budgets to find money to do things. I mean, I learned that early in Accounting 101. You can always tweak the budget enough to find the things that you need to have done. And you mentioned the head of 2 organizations. Well, the objectives are a little different. Education, it's about how we're going to get the right funds to operate. One of the priorities we have in Alpha Kappa Alpha is HBCU funding. How we hope this new administration will prioritize HBCUs to play a more meaningful role in the community. And we want to be able to use this organization and other just lobbyists to help us in Washington, help us navigate through. When I go up there, we have somebody who will tear us around in groups, but we don't have the access that we really need, because it's all about funding and policy. In the sorority, we leverage the network we have on the Hill, the members of Congress, Amira, who's helping so hard in your office, the liaison from our organization, who works actively with the legislators to keep her finger on the pulse of politics and the legislation on the Hill and the White House. That's what we need to help with our legislative agenda, to keep us updated on what's really going on, what's developing. And I think there's a lack of exposure also for student exposure. Students need to see people like you come to Tennessee State and go to Clark Atlanta and go to FAMU and just see that it's done. Here's how it's done. You're real people. This is a real profession that I can go into, and it can be lucrative if I work hard, So the way that you live by example. So we do more as presidents to bring you to our campuses, to beef up the organization and show here's a pathway we want you to choose. And they're choosing it, but not enough. It's not like, we're focusing more on healthcare and we focus on engineering and STEM. That doesn't cover it all. It just covers part of it. They need to know here's something you can really be helpful across the board. That's how I see it.
Well, if we can, I just want to say in response to Dr. Glover's sharing how we can help, we may want to think about, in some of us that are a part of companies, they allow you to do things. Those of us, to help. And it doesn't all have to be monetary. A lot of it can be connecting. If we can get some of Dr. Glover's students and presidents like her students plugged in to opportunities, being appointed to boards. I had a discussion with one of my friends and fraternity brothers with the NFL. Even though the people feel that the NFL is doing a great job and they have the NFL cares and they have the whole diversity piece and they have Mr. Carter doing certain things, still, let's get some of these young talent that they have, not on the field, but also off the field in some of these front offices. Let's get them involved in some of these boards that the president can make appointments to as a young person with bank, to be able to provide that kind of representation on what's really going on as it relates to neighborhoods and challenged neighborhoods, because many of these brothers and sisters are from those challenged neighborhoods. and they can give voice to those things. But we'll think about it and we'll go from there. With that, I want to thank all of our panelists. And this was definitely, for me,
Great.
a treat to be a part of this discussion. I look forward to being a part of many other discussions. Let's treat each other like family. Let's understand that we're working together and not working against one another. And let's take this moment, and hopefully a year from now, when we come together in a chat room or what have you, same kind of setup, that we can talk about some of the accomplishments through us working together. With that, my good friend has become my good friend, Ms. Reynolds, who we've been talking quite often, and she's good on email, and she's very much on top of helping us as we are a very young organization. I just want to thank you for allowing us to be a part of this in the leadership of MBPLA. I'm dyslexic, so if I messed up the acronym, please forgive me. Ms. Reynolds, I turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to this wonderful panel. I want everyone on this call to know and hopefully feel what I feel, which is nourished. The last 2 days have been incredible. I feel more empowered to go out and do the bold work that is before all of us. I know that we are all stronger together and that we're working towards a common goal. And so the future of the MBPLA is bright. And I have no doubt that in 5, 10, 20 years, this profession will be more representative of our communities. Our policymakers will have a more diverse perspectives because of the conversations that we've started over the last 2 days. So thank you all so much for your time and for lending your expertise to this panel and what we sought out to accomplish. I want to let everyone know that if you have some more time, and I know it's been a great day, but if you want to keep the party going, there is a link. We've got an after party. It's an open meeting. Everybody will be able to see each other's face and have some interaction. That's going to kick off at 2 o'clock with our esteemed host, who is also our vice chair of the MBPLA, Miss Yolanda Cash Jackson. Yolanda, if you're on, I just want to let you close out our summit for the day. Thank you, everybody.
I am on. And so I encourage everybody. Hello, Dr. Glenda Glover, my Sunday night friend. That's an inside joke, y'all. And Congressman Meek. And Roy, this was amazing. Just absolutely amazing. I am full, I am nourished. I am just without words with what I heard today. But we want to talk and we want to see each other and we want to share further. So hang out with us. And I don't know if Greg is on here, but I can just tell you guys have made a dream come true. Greg is a visionary and he called us all together and said, you know what, I got an idea. And Congressman Meek knows that, you know, I do answer ideas. We had a lot of them over the years, but so this after party thing is just a culmination of us talking about how we can, something we started off the day talking about making money moves. I no longer want to work for food. I really want to make a difference and make a living. So I'll see you in a little bit and log on. Take care.